This is question 11.5, number 2, part 2, where we'll pick up in section B. Again, we have 6 comics that are being selected from. All 6 will perform. In B, we want the probability that F is first and C is third. So again, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 comics that are being picked out of 6. So 6 out of 6 are being selected, and we want F to be in the first place and C to be in the third place. As a reminder, probability is always calculated the same way. It's the number of ways the particular event can happen divided by the total possible outcomes. Now, in the prior part A, we already calculated the total possible outcomes, which was selecting out of the 6 comics, selecting all 6 of them. How many ways could that happen? And we calculated that to be 720. So that number is going to stay consistently 720 throughout the problem. Now we have to calculate for the top the number of ways that F would be first and C would be third. So if we situate out the 6 comics, if F is selected first and C is selected third, those 2 spots are not random. They have been filled. So the only spots that will be random are these 1, 2, 3, 4 seats. So we actually are only selecting 4 of the comics. And of course, we're selecting all 4 of them. We're going to pick the 4 of them. So that would be 4 comics, and we're selecting 4 of them. This is very similar to the prior part, where it simplifies to be 4 factorial over 1, and then 4 factorial is 24. So the probability that F is first and C is third is 24 over 720, which does simplify. 24 divides evenly into both of these into 1 over 3. And if you aren't sure how to get from this 4 and 4 for N and R, just go back up to the original example in the last video and see how we did the 5 and 5 and 6 and 6. It's exactly the same process. Part C is the probability that we select this exact order, that comic B, F, C, E, D, and A would be selected in that order and no other order. And there's actually no reason to need a formula for this, because that's there's only one way that can happen. So again, the probability is always the number of ways over the total possible. The total possible in part C stays 720. That number isn't changing. But when I go ahead and pre-select the 6 comics, that's the only way that can happen. So that's why the numerator in this case is 1. There is no other way that we could make that same order. So that one, actually, we don't have any calculating to do in part C. And finally, part D is the probability that we select either comic D or A last. Well, this or means that we actually have to split up this into 2 different probabilities. The probability that D is last, or the probability that A is last. And then all we have to do is calculate these 2 separately and then add them together. Now, I know that probability of D being last might feel different than the probability of B being first, but it's actually the exact same situation if you think about it, because in each of these cases, we're picking one comic to be in a particular spot and the rest are random. So it actually works out to be exactly the same situation as in A. So the numerator is that we have 5 spots that we're filling by 5 comics in both cases. It's just in the first one, it's D that we know where that person goes, and in the second one, it's A that we know where that person goes. So it works out to be 1/6 and 1/6. When you add those together, it's 2/6, which simplifies to be 1/3.